Good evening, and welcome to this evening's session of Pathways to Parenting Success. Tonight's topic is Address Stress Now. For those of you viewing this program at home, I encourage you to submit questions to www.boulderpsychologicalservices.com, and we'll take the opportunity to respond to your questions here on air. So the format for this evening is we have four panelists who will be each taking a different topic related to stress. So again, please feel free to submit your questions. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the Boulder Valley School District, for providing us the opportunity to broadcast this show to you, the Boulder Daily Camera, the Parent Engagement Network, Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance, the Hope Coalition, Boulder Psychological Services, and the Parent Engagement Network. So thank you for joining us this evening. So to talk a little bit about the topic this evening, I wanted to share with you some information that I've had the opportunity to collect. And before I forget, again, my name is Leisha Connors-Bauer. I'm with Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance. So one of the things that I do in my job with Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance is work on youth-related concerns in the community and develop community responses to that. One of the things we did a few years ago is that we held some summits with middle and high school students, and we asked them to talk about things that are related to their health. I thought it would be interesting to share with you some of those pieces of information. From the middle school students, they said that stress and depression are real and talking about them is taboo. Rumors, bullying, conflicts with peers, homework, family issues, and managing relationships can create feelings of stress and depression. Some students feel pressure to be perfect and of meeting multiple deadlines. Some students said that they feel stress and pressure from society at large and the media. While it's uncomfortable to talk about, students tend to turn to their friends for support. They worry that adults will make a big deal out of it. In terms of the high school students identified stress as the second most important health issue in facing teens. They experience difficulty in balancing all of the aspects of their lives, and they're experiencing some uncertainty about their future, and they identify stress as one of the causes of depression. One of the things we also did was to take a look at what do elementary school kids think about stress. Do they experience stress in the same way? Can they talk about stress in the same ways? We did a quick survey of 2 elementary schools, and it was really just a convenience survey of who could answer the questions. So we asked them if they could say what stress is. And one first grader said it's being sad. A second grader said when you have too many things to do. A third grader said when you are late or when you're trying to do something and you can't finish it. A fourth grader said that stress was when you cry because you are alone, and a fifth grader said when you feel overwhelmed with something. Some of the responses they gave for indicating when they feel stressed is that if they have a lot of homework and have to read at night. That was a second grader. A fifth grader said if my family isn't happy with each other, that creates feelings of stress. A fourth grader, if I can't play with my friends. A fifth grader said, I have problems, but I don't talk to anyone. So I thought it was also interesting. We asked those same elementary students, what are some of the things that make them feel better? A first grader said, when I can play with my brother and my friends. A second grader, getting a Lego set. A third grader, I try to think that I can finish on time or think, you can do it. A third grader, when my dog comes and sleep with me. That's my personal favorite. A fifth grader, when I get something done and I'm proud of it. I thought it would be helpful to put that within the context of what our own kids are saying about stress within our community. There's a poll called Kids Health Kids Poll, which is available online, and also talks a little bit more about some of the things that impact stress in kids' lives and some of the coping strategies that they adopt. And I thought that, given what I just shared about our local kids, the Kids Health Kids Poll said 52% of kids say that one of their coping strategies is to play or do something active, and 44% is said to listen to music. So I thought, given sort of that context of what we hear about with kids, it would be really helpful for us to talk a little bit more about stress, what it is, what stress means, what are some of the coping strategies, and what are ways that we can address stress within our families. Our first speaker tonight is Karen Wilding. Karen received her master's in social work from the University of Denver and is a licensed clinical social worker. Karen has over 25 years of experience working with a wide range of clients that includes personal and professional experience with single parenting, step families, and adoption. She was the director of counseling at an alternative high school for 16 years. Karen.
Thank you, Leisha. Thank you, Leisha. Well, I feel like I should have brought my dog here tonight to reduce everyone's stress. But that was very helpful to hear what the people in the community are feeling. First of all, I want to start by saying that stress is not an independent thing. It's a reaction. Stress can be a positive or negative reaction to a situation, and it can produce either high performance or negative results, such as anxiety or ill health. Positive stress is known as eustress. It is apparent in athletes who meet a challenge, scientists who discover something, successful teachers, lecturers, writers, and people who accomplish what they set out to do. Some stress situations can boost our inner potential and our creativity. So stress is not all bad news. Moderate stress is necessary in our life. Stress responses are one of our body's best defense systems against outer and inner danger. Under stress, the brain is emotionally and biochemically stimulated to sharpen performance. So just consider a situation like taking a test or doing a presentation. Reducing your stress through preparation and planning leads to more confident and competent performance. So, negative stress or distress is what we usually think of when we refer to stress. In a challenging situation, the brain prepares the body for defensive action, the flight or fight response. It releases stress hormones, namely cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones raise the blood pressure, and the body prepares to react to the situation. I'm sure you all know what this feels like. You're flooded with energy. When we fail to counter a stress situation, the hormones remain released in the bloodstream and cause physical symptoms like tiredness and anxiety. So eustress, or positive stress, has these characteristics. It motivates and focuses energy. It's short-term. It's perceived as within our coping abilities to handle this kind of stress. It feels exciting, and it improves our performance. In contrast, distress causes anxiety. It can be short or long-term. It's perceived as outside of our coping abilities. It feels unpleasant, and it decreases performance and can lead to mental and physical problems. So the question is, how do you typically respond to stressful events in your life? Do you allow yourself to sit with stress and use stressful energy constructively? Or do you feel overwhelmed by stress and turn toward a state of panic or physical or emotional withdrawal? We all handle stress differently, and this is partly due to a lifetime of repeated experience with stressful events. We originally learn how to relate to stress through examples that we lived with as children, either our parents or our caregivers. They responded in a certain way to their own stress and our stress. And if we learn that stress is unbearable, painful, or bad, we usually carry this emotional and mental baggage with us into adulthood and see our own stress through this lens. On the other hand, if we were fortunate enough in childhood to witness adults using stress constructively, then we have likely internalized healthy examples of how to handle stress. The importance of reflecting back on your personal experience is to get familiar with your habitual tendencies and patterns of how you generally respond to stress so you can make different choices now. Just because you had less than stellar examples of how to handle stress when you were growing up doesn't mean that you can't change the way you choose to act now. And in doing this, you'll be a different example to your children and people that are around you. As a parent, I had to learn not to react too quickly to difficult situations with my kids. I had to work at encouraging a moment of thinking on my part and their part in order to communicate that difficulty is not always a crisis. So change is constant, and each stressful event in your daily life, from little things to big things, is an opportunity to practice new ways of responding to stress. So my fellow panelists are going to discuss more details of how you can work with this in your life and coping strategies. But overall, what parents can do for themselves and their kids is to teach and model stress reduction activities and be active about this, not passive. If you choose how to react to a situation, you will feel less like you're in, you're in a state of fight or flight. So my point is that you can have less distress in your life when you pay attention to your reactions to everyday difficulties.
Thank you, Karen. I have a quick question for you about that. You said that if you choose how you react to stressful situations. So my question is, so by choosing how you react, does that mean that then you're taking some control over that stressful situation and maybe somehow reducing the stress in your response to it?
That's 100% correct. If you have a moment where you insert thinking, you are moving from having a totally emotional response to a response that is mitigated by your thought process and your energy dropping down.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take a brief commercial moment to let you know about the next Pathways to Parenting Success presentation. This will be March 5th here in the BVSD boardroom and also broadcast live on Channel 22. And the topic is Impacts of Medical Marijuana. I'd also like to let you know that if you want to come to another in-person event, on February 13th, Pathways to Parenting Success will be at the Meadows Branch Library, and the topic is School Sports, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And if you're watching in the audience, again, I encourage you to submit your questions. The website is www.boulderpsychologicalservices.com. You can just click on the link for Address Stress Now and submit your questions. Our next panelist is Susan Dennison. Susan received her master's in social work from the University of Denver and is a licensed clinical social worker. Susan has been working with individuals and families since 1990. Her clinical experience includes outpatient individual, group, and family psychotherapy. Susan is also trained in a variety of complementary healing methods. Susan.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Leisha, and thanks, Karen. So, as a segue to what Karen was saying, I wanted to speak a little bit, and Leisha had already spoken some about this, around what fuels stress in kids. And some of the main sources, which again you kind of cited, but I'll go through them again. One of the biggest one is school demands and frustrations around that. So that's pretty big. Negative thoughts and feelings about themselves. Body changes, very, very huge during this period of time, especially between middle school and high school. Problems with friends and or peers at schools. We know that there's a lot more, or at least I think, increased abuse by peers with kids. That's going on all over the place, actually. Unsafe living conditions or neighborhoods, which luckily we don't seem to have a lot of going on around here, but that's one that was cited for some kids. Parent separation or divorce, chronic illness or severe problems in the family, death of a loved one, move or change of schools, too many activities and too high of expectations, either by the child or by the parent, family financial issues. So these things, again, are some sources of stress for kids. When kids are stressed, what we typically see is anxiety, depression, withdrawal, physical illness, aggression, both physical and verbal, poor coping through drug or alcohol use or self-harm, insomnia or hypersomnia, which is sleeping too much, anger or rage issues and frustration. I'm sure there's other thoughts about that as well, because typically we all handle stress in a different way. But that's, pretty typical of that kids I see that are stressed out or say they're stressed out. So what do? Oftentimes we medicate kids. I have challenges with that thinking. There's plenty of research to support that psychotropic drugs for kids and adolescents are on the rise. And I think that really, if you step back and look at the bigger picture, this is a lifestyle issue. It's a cultural issue. So that needs to be brought into focus. So it's not just the child that's necessarily challenged by stressors, but a larger culture that continues to push our kids to be all and to do all. I recently had a kiddo about a couple of weeks back say, I work so hard in school, I'm so active, I'm doing, and then I come home and then I just can't get motivated to do anything. I just crash. And my response to her was that that's pretty typical, because your nervous system is trying to find a way to self-regulate. That if you're in sympathetic mode, if you're in fight-flight constantly, then it's just trying to find a way to go back into that relaxation response. So these kids are having a hard time being able to handle the abundance of things to do during their school week, and then they can't do anything on the weekends. They're exhausted. So that's a huge concern again. So again, big factors that I see in my practice, again, the school stressors, there's this constant push to get ahead. When you have a kid that tends to be perfectionistic, that can create a lot of challenges, especially if you have parents that are really pushing to get all straight A's, and then to just keep doing and be more and take all those AP classes so that you can get into a good school, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it needs to be in balance. Of course, we want our kids to excel and we want them to do well. However, when you see your kids coming up with panic disorder in their teenage years, I had a kiddo who was 9 years old who came into my office with panic disorder, or ulcers in high school. That's a concern. So I'm seeing a lot more physical illnesses as a response to these kinds of stressors. The other one is, again, too much homework. These guys are getting up at 5:30, 6 in the morning, going to school all day, and then they're in some activity, or 2 or 3, and then they're coming home to hours of homework. So this needs to be addressed with the school. I know that there's been some with the Race to Nowhere. There's been a lot of discussions around what we're doing to kids in the school systems, and I think we need to continue to have those discussions. I don't think it's wise to have a child going to bed at 12 and getting up at 5. They're not getting that 8 to 10 hours of sleep they need at night. And they're having trouble sleeping. Again, insomnia is a big one. I hear this often from children that they're really struggling with insomnia. Let's see. The other thing that I see a lot that is very different for me, and I talk a lot to parents and to kids about this, is technology. As wonderful as it is, we're starting to see some research that states that having a cell phone, particularly a smartphone, is creating more anxiety. I know it is in my life. That's why I'm trying to put it away a little more, because we are constantly checking that. So if you think when you were growing up, at least for me in the dinosaur years, I had one phone to 7 people. It was plugged into a wall, and there was no voicemail. When you weren't home, you just weren't home. That is not the case these days. And I cannot tell you how many kids say to me that they have their cell phones on underneath their pillow when they go to bed at night. So parents, I want to encourage you to take that cell phone away. It's okay. You're just there to tell them that they need to get a good night's sleep. You shut it off, give it to them the next day. But this constant barrage of cell phone use and texting and all of that, again, you can't take that away totally. That's not going to work. But again, how do you find balance with these things? And also with social networking, there's research that's showing that there's more depression and anxiety because it increases isolation. Not to mention the fact that kids can go and put whatever they want out there. And that's scary enough to think about, because we know some of the repercussions from that. So if you can get them, to back away from some of those things, I'm just seeing that this addictive pattern with them not being able to get away from technology, they can't get away from the drama, basically, and I don't love that word, but that's really what it comes down to. They have a hard time getting away from that. There was a Yoga Journal article a couple of years ago that came out that actually talked about how people are coming up with more post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms in the general population who don't have trauma. And to me, this speaks to, again, this constant barrage of just doing, and being stuck in that fight-flight pattern, which eventually keeps people in that sympathetic part of the nervous system. They can't come down and self-regulate. So again, it's a concern. How do we help support our kids in just being and engaging some of the relaxation responses that Jeff will be talking about in a minute? So again, there's very little relaxation, and there's a constant push, which continues to create more adrenaline and cortisol, which Karen was speaking to, which then creates more of this fight-flight. Typically, in this culture, our nervous system and brain thinks we're being chased by the tiger down the street. We're not. So why are we constantly in this fight-flight pattern? This is not healthy. We're not being chased by the tiger. But our bodies think we are. So we have to really work at helping support our children, and as Karen said, being good role models for modeling that behavior on what do we do when we are feeling overwhelmed? How do we take a break? How do we not have rigid expectations and high expectations, but again, following that middle road? Let's see. So I think that's pretty much it for me. Again, just really being mindful of how much we're pushing our kids and being mindful of the technology, I think are really the things that I'm seeing. And being aware of peers and how that impacts children. Of course, activities, again, are really wonderful things, but how many activities are they in? Do they really need to be in violin lessons, then going to soccer practice, then going to piano, then voice lessons, and then by the time they get home at 10, they have 5 hours of homework to do? So just, again, finding the balance in all of that is going to be really important in order to help our kids be able to come back down and having realistic expectations, not only for ourselves as their parents, but what we can do to support them when they are feeling stressed and overwhelmed. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Susan. Well, I kind of feel like I need to hide my cell phone under the table or my smartphone. But the reason I have it out is those of you who are submitting questions online through www.boulderpsychologicalservices.com, I will get them right here. I would also like to encourage those in our audience to submit questions as they occur to you, and we'll take your questions up here. Susan, one of the things that you mentioned that I wanted to follow up on is you talked about family stressors, and I was thinking when you said that about, the economy and some of the financial things that are happening right now. And I know as a parent, your tendency is to want to protect your kids and not necessarily talk about those kinds of things with your kids. Would you recommend parents have those kind of conversations?
I would, but not in detail, because I see that really stresses kids out. I have a couple of kids who have come in to say that their family have recently been undergoing some financial stressors, and I see that that's really stressing them out. So I think, with kids, it's a little goes a long way. So just being mindful around, right now things are a bit of a challenge, we need to pull back. That's a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have kids that are kind of used to being handed a lot of things, that could be a challenge in and of itself. But just think less is more. Because then they start to worry, and then they just don't need to have all that information about the details.
Great, thank you. Our next panelist is Elizabeth Matthews. Elizabeth is a local licensed psychotherapist and member of Boulder Psychological Services. She has worked with adults, teens, and families since 1996 and currently has offices in Boulder and Louisville. Elizabeth is especially skilled in helping individuals develop and enhance social and relationship skills. She has also been published in the Boulder Daily Camera and the Thrive Handbook. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Leisha. Today, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach and talk about parenting styles, because how you parent your child can increase or decrease the amount of family stress. The Love and Logic program identifies 3 types of parenting: helicoptering, drill sergeant, and consultant. Now, the helicopter parent, these are the parents who want to protect their children from all discomfort. They make their decisions for them and rescue them from life's consequences. A helicopter parent constructs sunny outcomes, and they diminish rules and accountability. The next parenting style we have is the drill sergeant. This is the tough love approach. The premise of the drill sergeant is that discomfort builds character. Drill sergeants are often critical. They tell children what to do, think, and feel. The drill sergeant values rules and obedience, but they tend to diminish the value of relationship, which kids need to learn. So helicoptering and drill sergeant styles may at first seem likely to decrease stress when kids are young. That's very questionable, but it's really likely that those approaches are going to increase stress as children age, because these kids are inexperienced with decision-making, are inexperienced with losing, are inexperienced with resolving conflict in relationship. So they struggle with age-appropriate challenges, and struggling with age-appropriate challenges makes life very stressful. The third type of parenting is the consultant parents. Consultant parents offer kids options that they, the parent, finds acceptable. So when you give your menu of options, it's things that you already decided that you can live with. And then they let their kids choose. They offer guidance and direction. They hold children accountable for their choices and their behavior. In the consultant parent, there's no rescuing and there's no shame. Consulting parents value relationship and rules, and that's what they teach their kids. So now, to demonstrate the consultant parenting style, my colleague Jeff has agreed to role play a conversation between a parent and a 10-year-old regarding schoolwork. Jeff?
I hate my teacher.
Sounds like you had a tough day.
Yeah, I did. I failed another math test.
Ouch. That must feel lousy.
It does. I hate math. Plus, tonight I have homework.
I know you struggle with math. What are you going to do about that failing grade?
I don't know. I guess I'll just fail.
Do you want to discuss some options?
What?
Well, you could fail math this year. That's an option. But if you fail math this year, you're probably going to have to repeat it next year or go to summer school. So one of the things you might want to do is talk to your teacher about what you can do to learn the material so you can raise your grade and not have to go through this system again that you're finding so painful.
I don't know. I just don't think I can do it, but I guess I could think about it.
Okay. Look, I know you're frustrated. Maybe I can help you tonight figure out where you're getting stuck and what it is you need to address, and then tomorrow you can go talk to your teacher.
I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Mom.
See, now, this parent, this consulting parent, they offered empathy and guidance, and that's really important because you don't want to put your kid in fight or flight. So if they come to you and they tell you they have this problem and you say, "What?" and you get tense, they're not going to open up and talk to you about the rest of the problem. These parents didn't react. And by not reacting, they didn't enter into a stressful power struggle. And they also didn't make the kids' problem their own. They didn't think, "What? You failed? We have to do homework. I have to get involved. I have to call your teacher. What is it we're going to have to do?" They gave it back to the child. And the benefit of that is it allows kids to face the positive and negatives of life now, while the stakes are relatively low. Because even though a math test to a 10-year-old may feel like a really big deal, in the overall scheme of things, it's not. I know I don't remember any math tests that I failed, and I'm sure I did. So the consulting parent style communicates to kids that they are lovable regardless of how often they fail and how often they succeed. So by doing this, it's going to prepare your kid for the challenges of adulthood. Now, here's a big bonus in stress reduction using the consultant approach. If you stay emotionally engaged with your kids and you have well-established house rules like no riding in a car with someone who's drunk, okay, just put that out there. There's a non-negotiable. That's a house rule. It cannot be broken. Then you allow age-appropriate choices like, "I understand you're going out tonight. Do you want me to pick you up or do you want to get a ride home with a sober person?" Your child is going to learn real-life consequences and have to deal with the outcome of their own choices. And so if you do this, you increase the likelihood that you're going to have responsible, independent, and confident kids much of the time, and that you're going to have a less stressed, more loving family much of the time. Now, of course, nothing is perfect, and most parents are going to be a little bit of everything, and that's okay. But I encourage you not to overreact with your child. I encourage you not to get involved in power struggles, and I encourage you to let them make their own choices about things. And again, it's choices from a menu that you have given them yourself. Now, if you decide that you want to move more towards this love and logic approach, the love and logic folks say that when you change a parenting style, it takes about a full year to work out the kinks. Because I can guarantee that your kids are going to argue before things improve. It will get worse before it gets better. Just keep that in mind. And if it's something you're serious about wanting to do, don't let that discourage you too much because it will get better. And I talk to a lot of parents. And for people who are taking the consulting approach and choosing not to argue and not to power struggle, are finding parenting to be a much more enjoyable job. So good luck. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Well, those of you watching at home, there is still time to submit questions this evening and get your question answered by one of our panelists. www.boulderpsychologicalservices.com. A quick follow-up question for you, Elizabeth. As I was listening to you talk about the consulting parenting styles, one of the things that struck me is that what the consulting parenting style is doing is empowering kids to realize that they can handle this, that they can handle what's in front of them, and that they know that you're giving them the tools or helping them provide the tools to handle the problems that bump up in front of them, so that maybe they won't necessarily have to feel as stressed about what's going on in their lives.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good point because if you can show your kid that you trust that they can make good choices, and know that if they don't make good choices, they're going to have to deal with the consequences themselves. Then not only do they mature and grow in confidence, they're just more confident people, and I just lost what I was saying. So I'm sorry, what was the question?
If it's about empowerment, empowering your kids.
Oh, absolutely, it's about empowerment. And not only is it empowering them, but it's empowering you. Because a lot of times you can hear parents say, you know, the kids are driving me nuts, and I've gone over this again and again and again. We don't have to say things a million times. And one of the things that kids will do is they'll get you talking, and then if you say, I need for you to be home at 11, and they'll say, well, so-and-so never had to get home 11, and they'll get you off track. And then you start getting disempowered, and you start getting confused, and before you know it, you're talking about something that happened with a sibling 3 years ago. So by giving them choices and just sticking to the choices and staying on track, you empower you and you empower your kids.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Jeffrey Kuhn. Jeffrey? I'll go with Jeff, in less syllables, is a licensed clinical social worker who has been providing individual and group therapy to children, adolescents, young adults, and parents in the Boulder, Denver metro area since 1995. Jeff's counseling style and therapeutic approach is unique and innovative. He specializes in children and adolescent therapy, high-risk populations, group facilitation, and parent coaching. Jeff.
Thanks, Alicia. So I'm going to talk a little bit about stress reduction techniques and some tips to follow. As we know, research has proven that stress reduction techniques are fairly simple to learn and with practice can be highly effective. As we have learned, when you experience stress, physiological changes occur, and if we don't calm ourselves relatively quickly, these changes can alter our state, and if we stay in this altered state too long, it can cause us both physical and emotional problems. So practicing the following stress reduction techniques can calm you down quickly and help return your body to its natural and normal state. So I was going to start with a few tips. Tip 1, understand how you experience stress. So the first thing you might want to pay attention to are your individual triggers. What makes you stressed? What makes you upset? What makes you unhappy? The second thing you might want to pay attention to is your individual warning signs. Each of us usually have two types of warning signs. One might be physiological or physical, where our body changes, our heart beats, we start to sweat, we get pain in our stomach. And the other is usually psychological, where our brain is flooded with what I call negative self-talk. Also, know how you respond to stress. One way to understand how you experience stress is to start what I would call a stress journal. A stress journal can help you identify the regular stressors in your life and the ways you deal with them. Each time you feel stress, write it down in your journal, and over time you should probably see some patterns and some common themes emerge. The things you might want to track would include the causes of your stress, how it feels both physically and emotionally, how you act when you're stressed out, and what you did to make yourself feel better. And that last one is you need to be honest and write down both the positive things you do and the negative. By recognizing your personal stress signals early and by simply admitting that you feel stressed, you can actually slow down the buildup of stress, the buildup of negativity, and the buildup of anxiety. Tip number 2, strengthen your support network. A strong support network of friends, families, and community contacts can greatly reduce life stressors. As we've heard earlier, when we get stressed out, we tend to go into a cocoon or begin to isolate ourselves. Instead, reach out to a friend or a family member. You could call up someone on the phone and ask them to go for a walk. You can email an old friend, although pay attention to too much technology use. Or you can volunteer. I think volunteering also is a really great way to become connected and to help others. Through helping others, we oftentimes feel much better about ourselves and our personal situations. Third tip, adapt a healthy lifestyle. When you eat healthily, when you exercise regularly, and when you get enough sleep, your body is much better able to cope with stress and daily life pressures. Avoid using pills, drugs, smoking, drinking, overeating, undereating, and caffeine. Caffeine tends to be a big one for a lot of us. Tip 4, know your limitations and learn to say no. Trying to do everything for everyone and pleasing everyone all the time can be a one-way ticket to stress and to future problems. Be clear about your limits and ability and stop trying to please everyone. Taking on more than you can handle is a surefire recipe for stress. Tip 5, eliminate or avoid stressors or stressful people, which means limit time with people who stress you out. Or if you're watching the news and it's driving you crazy, turn the TV off. Also, when you're out with people, try to avoid hot button topics like religion or politics. Also, this final one is, skip the big game if you're overly involved with your team and when they lose, you freak out. Might be something to reconsider. Tip 6, scheduling. Poor time management can cause a lot of stress. So I would encourage you to analyze your responsibilities and your daily tasks and try to distinguish between the shoulds and the musts. Eliminate things that aren't necessary or move them to the bottom of your to-do list. Also, when you plan ahead and don't overextend yourself, you'll feel more in control and more empowered. Tip 7, try doing only one thing at a time, which means leave your phone behind, especially when you go to the gym or out with friends or doing anything that requires that kind of personal connection. I'd also would encourage you to turn the TV off or get rid of the music when you're exercising. It really will make it a lot more enjoyable, and you'll be able to focus just on one thing, which I think will give your brain and your body a chance to relax. Next, I just want to go through a list of some common relaxation techniques. This is not an inclusive list, and I would encourage people to have a relatively long list of things to do when they're stressed, because certain things require different techniques and some things require many techniques. The first thing I would encourage you to do when you're feeling stressed is to breathe. By deep breathing or breathing from your diaphragm, you will provide more blood and oxygen to your nervous system, which will help you relax. Remember, when we breathe shallowly, by contrast, it causes our heart rate to go up as well as our blood pressure. It causes muscle tension and will make you feel more stressed. A second thing you can do is be aware of your thinking and learn to reframe your problems. This can be done by first acknowledging your negative thoughts or your negative perspectives and then replacing these negative thoughts with more positive, rational, and accurate thoughts. Another thing you can do is use what I call reminders. A short, clear, positive self-statement that focuses on your coping abilities and your strengths can really help calm you down and reduce your stress. So the next time you feel stressed out, try saying something like, I feel calm, I can handle this, let it go, breathe, take it easy, take a time out, remember your goals. And do this stuff internally, because if you talk externally, people might think you're crazy. Another thing you can do is what I call visualization. A study at the Cleveland Clinic found visualization as a highly effective tool in reducing stress. One example would be to close your eyes and to visualize a scene, whether it's walking on the beach, going for a hike, rock climbing, or doing whatever you do that causes you to calm yourself down and relax. So take a couple minutes out, close your eyes, and focus on whatever makes you comfortable. Some people also call this pleasant imagery. And I would also encourage you to think of the details while you're relaxing. So try to capture the sights, sounds, and smells of that internal picture. Another thing you can do, which is also very simple, is to smile. Smiling is a two-way mechanism. We usually smile when we're happy and when we're relaxed, but when we smile, it also causes transmitters in our, I'm not saying that right. So research has shown that smiling transmits nerve impulses from facial muscles to the limbic system, which tilts our neurochemical balance towards calm. And also remember, smiling is infectious. If you smile at others, you are more likely to get a smile in return. I found this really powerful. Another thing you can do is get active or exercise. So remember, almost any form of exercise or physical activity can act as a great stress reliever. Even if you're not an athlete or in the best shape, you can still exercise. And remember, exercise is a great stress reliever. So physical activity kind of pumps up the good endorphins, and it refocuses your mind and your energy. Things at work could be simply stretching, getting out of your seat at work, stretching. Other things you can do at home include yoga or going for a walk. And under exercise, almost anything goes, from dancing to skateboarding if you're a kid, to riding your bike, to rock climbing, to running. The more you can do, or the more anxious you feel, the more you should probably do. There usually should be kind of a counterbalancing activity here. Another thing I like to suggest is to be a fighter. A lot of times, at the first sign of stress, many people will often complain or say things like, "What did I do to deserve this?" The problem with this type of thinking and feeling like, let me start over. So the problem with this type of thinking is that we tend to feel like a victim. And when we victimize ourselves, it creates stress and it causes us to feel helpless. So instead of feeling sorry for yourself, focus on being proactive and focus on the parts of the problem you have control over. Another thing you can do is write. Writing can come in many forms, from journaling as a way of expressing your frustrations or fears or anxieties, to doing a pros cons list if you're not sure what to do, to simply writing down on a piece of paper the things you have control over and the things you don't, and then focusing on the things you do. Another thing you could do, which is one of my favorites, is to take a time out. Before you do or say something that's going to get you in trouble or that you're going to regret, step away from the problem and collect yourself. If you can't remove yourself from the problem, you can look away or take several deep breaths, or if you're at work, you can leave the person on hold until you collect yourself. During this time out, it's a chance to take a few deep breaths, to challenge your negative self-talk, to stretch, or to recite some of your reminders. Another one of my favorites is what I call space out. And that requires you to simply look out the window and find something of interest, whether it's the leaves blowing by, the trees swaying in the breeze, notice the clouds rolling by. Do that for 3 to 5 to 10 minutes and see if that does help calm you down. A couple other things you can do are listen to music or play music. Music has a very calming effect. Playing music is both calming and exhilarating. So anytime you can use music, go for it. And I don't think the type of music matters. I think the only thing that matters is the outcome. So if you're into classical music or rap, if it helps you calm down, then use it. A couple other things I would suggest are having hobbies. Hobbies can be really powerful and also really great releases and distractions. And hobbies can be anything from doing crossword puzzles to Sudoku, to gardening, to sewing, to knitting, to coloring, to drawing. So anything that you find interest in and is a healthy distraction, I would encourage you to do that. As we've also heard, use your pet. Pets are very powerful. There is a lot of research out that says just petting your pet will cause your stress to go down. Because the thing I love about pets and the things that are great about pets is they're unconditional. They don't care what you look like, how your day was. They're just there to love you and to listen. A couple other things you could do are to make plans. When we have things to look forward to, it can also be a great stress reliever as well as a wonderful way to keep you motivated. Have fun and be goofy. I think that's something we forget as adults, and that I think it's a great way to role model for our children, is just to have fun and to be silly. And then the final thing is to talk to someone. This could be a family member or a friend, or if you feel like life is getting the best of you or these personal stress techniques that you're using aren't enough, you might need to seek professional help. And the one great thing about Boulder, there's a lot of therapists available who can help you for a lot of different things. So I think that's all I really had. And just one thing I always remember, this is not a complete list. List could go on and on and on, and each of you need to really create your own individualized list. And as I said earlier, the more the merrier, because sometimes you just need one technique in your toolbox. Other times you might need 20. Hopefully that'll help. Have a nice evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a particular age that you would recommend teaching your kids some of those stress techniques?
As soon as they can hear, listen. Yeah, I would say, 3, 4, 5, 6, as soon as it's logical, and teaching kids things that make sense. And I think the best thing you could probably do is role model. And if you're honestly using techniques that calm you down, your son or daughter will just pick up on that. I have a 2-year-old, and although I can't really teach him stress techniques, when I go into his room and I'm stressing out, he feeds on that. So I really practice calming myself with breathing, positive self-talk, and I always have a plan. And that really just keeps me, grounded. And I think that's really the beginning place. Then you can teach them to breathe or talk or take time outs.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we do have a question that was submitted online. Woohoo! As I deal with my technology to access this question. So what's the relationship between stress and other sort of emotional type things such as depression and anxiety? Anybody like to take a stab at answering that question?
Say the question one more time.
What's the relationship between stress and emotional disorders such as depression or anxiety? Karen?
First, if you remember that stress is a response, it then can act as a magnifier for other things going on. If you are anxious by diagnosis or depressed, it could magnify those situations. And if you're normally not depressed or have an emotional disorder, it can make you feel depressed or anxious. So it's not exactly causal. Stress is a reaction, so you can use the techniques that Jeff was talking about and really reduce the stress part, and then get help in working with if it's a serious issue, you can get help in working with the anxiety or the depression.
Okay. Elizabeth?
I think of stress and anxiety as often being similar. Thank you. But stress is normal, and we probably have stress just about every day, and stress is something that you can expect. Depression but depression and anxiety often are longer lasting, and you notice that it gets depressed enough or anxious enough that it affects your relationships, affects how you feel about yourself, it affects your work life, you're not sleeping as well. And so you can anticipate stress, but if stress gets so bad that you find that your mood is affected or that you're not sleeping and the anxiety is impacting your life in a difficult way, then that might be time to seek some guidance.
Okay. A couple of you touched on this, but I have a question that I think is a little more specific. When you talked about reducing technology, television watching and that type of thing, because when we look at the Kids Health Kids poll, 42% say that one of their coping strategies is to watch TV or play a video game. So the question is, do kids get more stressed playing video games? Jeff?
Yes and no. I think it's really dependent on the child and the situation, because some kids find those activities as releases, and it really works that way. And other kids I've worked with have actually destroyed their Nintendo, I guess like ages made their video games. So I think it's really dependent on the kid. And I think someone had mentioned this earlier, it's balance. If that's all you've got and that's all you're doing, then you can't always access those video games and the TV as a stress reliever. So I think balance and also having a larger pool of things to use. I like to rock climb, and I can't always access rock climbing at work. I wish I could, but it doesn't always work that way.
Okay. Susan, did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say kind of what Jeff said, just to keep it in balance. And I think, well, again, like Jeff said, it is both. It can increase stress and decrease it. So it really depends on the child. I think too much of anything, again, is going to be a challenge. And if you're hanging out on a video game to release stress for 8 hours a day, which is not unheard of, then that's a problem because you need to have some more tools in your toolbox to handle the stressors. And really what I'm talking about when I talk about technology is probably less that than kind of this constant barrage of just texting and phone time where you just don't get a break from peer drama. Everybody, you get 10 kids on there all talking about the drama of the day, and it just keeps morphing and going and going. That's more concerning to me probably than watching TV or video games. But again, just balance.
Okay. We have about 5 minutes left, so I'm hoping to squeeze in one more question before we have to wrap up. And that is, what can schools and teachers do to help reduce stress in students? Susan.
Less homework. It's a little overkill, I think. Again, kids are, I don't know about you all out there in the audience, or even you guys here, but I didn't have that much homework like they have now. When we have kindergartners coming home with homework, to me, that's concerning. And I think just back off from the pushing. When kids in school in the kindergarten level are being told that they have to get it together because someday they're going to go to college, we are bypassing this whole piece around development that's so important for them to be utilizing that right brain, that creative brain. It's not all about the left brain. So again, just being aware of adding those pieces in so that we can have balanced individuals.
Great. Elizabeth.
I think it would be great if teachers could pay more attention to bullying in school. And if they notice that someone's being bullied, make note of it and take some action, even if it's just talking to someone and letting them know that they've been seen, or taking someone honestly who appears that they've been hurt or bullied. I think that would go a long way to have it be exposed.
Okay. Karen?
I also think that, somewhat like Susan said, there's more homework and there's less creative projects in school. There's less art, there's less music, and there's also less just physical play. It's now sports that are very competitive, and, recess is almost not a concept anymore. And I think that schools and teachers could encourage joyfulness. They could encourage creativity and play.
Great. Jeff?
I guess one thing to add would be to provide kids with resources and tools. I've worked with a lot of kids who, for whatever reason, haven't learned some of this stuff at home. And I think, unfortunately, some of the schools need to provide some groups or some support networks within the school and make connections with kids who are struggling. And I think that really can change the tide for some kids. Not all kids, but for some.
Great. Thank you. We're just about out of time. I'd like to thank our panelists, Karen Wilding, Susan Dennison, Elizabeth Matthews, and Jeff Kuhn. If you'd like to get in touch with any of our panelists, you can also do that at BoulderPsychologicalServices.com. Upcoming for the Pathways to Parenting Success, on February 13th is School Sports, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Learn about fair play and the balance between competition and fun. And I think we talked a little bit about sports and the role of sports. On February 27th is Unwinding Your Teen. Learn how to recognize and support your teen in alleviating the stressors of daily living. So if you'd like more specific information about how to handle stress, and that will be with Susan and Elizabeth at the Meadows Branch Library. On March 5th, right here in the BVSD boardroom, from 7 to 8 p.m., we will have another panel on the impacts of medical marijuana. Join us as we take on this controversial topic and discuss the impacts of medical marijuana on children, families, and the wider community. The panelists include Linda Kane, Avani Dilger, and Leland Johnson. So I'd like to thank all of you who tuned in tonight. Again, I particularly would like to thank our panelists and those of you in the audience. Have a good evening. Thank you.